Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 127 of spiritual healthcare. It is good to see everybody. It's been a crazy eventful week, of course, and I hope everybody is doing well. I hope you have all survived the last week of a lot of tension, especially in the US. It's been kind of nuts. So welcome everybody. I'm glad to see you. And today we're going to be talking about a few different things that I'm actually really stoked about. Two really great questions that have come in from David and Dan that I want to get to. So we're going to be talking about shadow people today, as well as fear and what role it has to play in the not only the entertainment world but paranormal shows and ratings and all of those things. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And as I say, shadow people cases, which is really cool. And I think what they've got to teach us. It was a great question that came in from David about engaging shadow people. What do you do when you see one? So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. So good morning to everyone that is logging in. It is nice to see you. Say hi in the chat so I know where you're from. It is good to see you, and as I say, we had a crazy week. I know there are some people that are really disappointed with the election results, and some that are related with the election results. So there's been, I think it's a mix of both worlds right now. And hopefully that this will not be something that will cause division, or hopefully further division going forward, because now is the time for us to start thinking as a whole, as to start thinking as to what we want as individuals going forward. We can't create in other people's reality, but we can create in ours. So we've got to start thinking about that. So good morning, everyone. And as I say, it is day 127 of spiritual healthcare, and we've had some ups this week. We've had some downs. I love the question that has come in for today about shadow people, because we've had some really interesting cases over the years here in Edmonton, and I've noticed there's been similarities in other cases going through. The word shadow, what does it mean? What is that? Is it necessarily a bad thing? Not always. So we're going to talk about that and talk about how to look at this a little bit different. The phenomenon, I think, of shadow people has gone on for such a extremely long time. And it's probably one of the most common talked about forms of paranormal phenomenon in the world. Shadow people and shadow this and shadow that. We always think of shadows as being secretive and dark and brooding and all of those things. But, what are they really? What are they really? Because we can't operate in this world without them. Good morning to Lori and Cindy and to John. Nice to see all of you this morning. It's good to see you guys. We've got really nice weather right now in Edmonton. It's cold. It's snowing. It is snowing. It's actually quite snowy here. We got a huge dump of snow. I don't know what everybody's weather is doing elsewhere and down in the States, but it is snowing here, let me tell you. We were supposed to actually have a bunch of dogs come out and search a property this past weekend, but they can't search these particular dogs can't search in snow, so that got called off because the snow is now above the dogs' heads. It's just crazy. We got so much. Nigel says, "Hey, how are you?" I am good. Things have been, as I say, busy here and working on some new projects with new people and focusing on art and all of those things that just release resistance. Just doing a lot of that. And Christmas shopping. I'm doing some Christmas shopping, which has been so much fun. I'm so looking forward to Christmas and how it's going to unfold this year. I think we have the potential to do some celebrating in ways that are brand new to everybody. And there's a whole bunch of things happening in Edmonton for celebratory stuff, which is cool. Good morning to Dan. Good morning. Nice to see everybody. Nigel, everybody. It's so good to see you. So the question that I wanted to start with today, because I think it launches into the whole half hour of spiritual healthcare, was from David Childers, who actually posted recently. David's a really great contributor to haunted hospitals. He's oh gosh, so many cases. I think I always end up with his cases somehow. David Childers. He's a paranormal investigator and has been working with Stormy Daniels over the last little while, who he says is actually a pretty cool medium. So who knew? Who knew? People have funny talents. So David was asking, should you talk to or engage shadow people? I thought this was a really interesting question because, as I was saying at the beginning of all of this, the shadow person phenomenon has been something that has been talked about. Most people that have a paranormal experience, or a lot of people, will turn around and say, yes, I've seen a shadow person. And sometimes they see a full form, full bodied apparition where they say that it has no features and it's just black and it wanders around houses and property and things like that. And, other people say they see glimpses, half of a person walking around a corner or something like this. So my experience I'll tell you my experience with shadow people to begin with, because I've had a rather long history with them. Our river valley here in Edmonton has got a really deep history. It has a beautiful pathways. We have one of the most luxurious in terms of wilderness and wildlife areas in any city in Canada. It's incredible here. And basically what we've experienced over the years and what people have reported has been dubbed the Riverdale Sasquatch, or the Riverdale Bigfoot. And what people have seen, and I've seen this twice, my dear friend Matt has seen it multiple times, and once in his actual house, because he lives right on the river. They have seen this gigantic, basically shadow person, black, formless, not really too much of a neck, but you can see like a head and great big shoulders and very tall body. And they've seen it on the pathways down by the river. And it will wander around and wander up to people's properties and all sorts of things. We had one lady come forward who said that she saw what she thought was a bear going through her garbage that was sitting out by the road. And when they came out to shoo the bear away, it stood up, and it wasn't a bear at all. It was this gigantic black, faceless shadow person that took 2 steps into the dark and disappeared. When I saw it, we were actually hosting a walking classroom down in the river valley, and Matt was supposed to meet me at the end of the hill to do some teaching. And so as the group was coming down the hill, I saw somebody standing at the bottom of the hill where he usually was. And I thought, okay, well, that's great. He's early. That's cool. And we came down the hill, and the closer that we got, the more I realized, I'm like, that's too big to be Matt. That's not Matt. And I realized it was actually facing us, and there was no features at all. It was pitch black, and it turned around on its heels and took about 3 or 4 steps into the shadows. And as soon as it hits the shadows, it was gone. So we've had some pretty neat experiences with them. I've had another report from a social worker friend of mine where he ended up engaged with one where the encounter did not go so well, but he was very frightened, so he started yelling at it and whatnot, and it got angry, and they ended up in a bit of a chase around this sort of this building that was down in the park. I don't know whether it was like an electrical building or whatever, but they ended up in a bit of a skirmish around this thing, which wasn't good. And he was very afraid. He felt very threatened. So over the years, I think there's been a plethora of these accounts come up. And as I say, our river valley here has had a ton of them. And what's interesting is that the outdoors ones that I've talked to people, they have said that they often will hang around river valley areas, like rivers and lakes and water and things like that. So people have questioned whether there's a First Nations tie to shadow people as well. It's really interesting. Nigel has a question as well, which I will grab in just a little bit here. So I wanted to introduce the concept of the shadow person to you guys, because nobody really knows really what they are. I've gotten that question a lot. What is it? We don't know. There's some theory going that it's our inability to interpret that light in a certain way, or that image in a certain way. Our brains are just not capable of interpreting the detail. So there's a couple of things like that. There's, people that suggest that it might be something interdimensional, something like passing back and forth, which I think is probably a little closer to the truth, that there's something that's kind of in and out of maybe a different frequency or something like that. It's really wild. So we don't know. But the question is, should you engage something like that? And I think, again, that, you know, the root of this comes down to, you know, your own personal energetic and vibrational state. If you've got something that's negative going on, or you're intuitively feeling, you know, fear, or something's up with this thing that's not right, and you know something's not right, then don't do it, you know. But if everything's been going okay and you feel like, you know, this is something that's curious or interested, you know, say hello, say, you know, introduce yourself, talk, you know, say a few words. Don't go overboard, and you know, see how it goes. See if you can you know, strike up you know, some sort of a communication. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. But again, it comes down to your own instincts. If you feel something's off with it, then don't do it. The concept of shadow is so interesting, because we automatically, boom, start thinking that this is evil. If it's dark, if it's, you know, whatever this is, it's evil. And we've got to really stop embracing the idea of shadow as something that is horrible and negative, because ultimately, when there are such great benefits with shadow, and ultimately we could not understand the lighter part of who we are, the lighter part of this world, the contrast, without having some sort of understanding or balance with the concept and the idea of shadow. I think shadow should be embraced, whether we're talking about shadow in terms of the ego, or whether we're talking about shadow in terms of if something maybe that's a little bit negative. Against something like that, you know, we've got to really be careful. And of course, our good friend Shadow on here is saying, of course, there is such prejudice against you, Shadow. I'm telling you, it's just, you know, you've picked one hell of a name there. Okay, so Nigel has a great question before we move on to Dan's question, which is, when a house is haunted and stuff happens inside, like the things start to move, etc. When a person dies in a house and new people move in, why do things never happen if they've been living in a house most of their lives? Would they not be mad with a new family moving in, etc.? So I think this is a really great question, and I will touch on this briefly, because I think and actually it leads a little bit into Dan's question too. So oftentimes when we get a situation where people are moving from one house to another house to another house, again, people are going to get whatever is on the same frequency. What they are going to attract is is what emotional state they've got going on. So if they're going to get something negative, they're going to ultimately, you know, they're going to attract that. They're going to be on the frequency of that. If they're going to get something positive, they're going to be on the frequency of positive. We've talked about that a lot. What people don't realize is that throughout the research that's gone on with life after death, we really seem to, based on the evidence, lose that egoic part of ourselves that says, you know, I'm attached to this thing, and I'm going to fight for this thing, and I'm going to. It's because that's very much an egoic attachment, right? Like it's something that we are, you know, we'll dig our nails into maybe, but you know, when we're alive. But that attachment really does seem to dissipate when we pass over, right? When we pass over. So I think oftentimes when we see situations, like let's look at something like Greyfriars Kirkyard, which is a really good example. When we see something that has been a place that has been negatively affected, or something seems to be very territorial over that space, you're not dealing with a human spirit at that point. You're dealing with something else that typically is these negative entities tend to be very territorial over spaces, over people. They're very hierarchical. So they tend to be a little bit more on the aggressive side when it comes to defending property or anything like that. We don't really see that with human spirits, although we will see, and this is really, really cool, we will see, say for example, somebody tries to break into a house. There has been times where spirits have chased them out of the house very promptly, very, very promptly. And, you know, and I think we have to remember that spirits really do come and go. These beings really do come and go. They're not stuck anywhere, you know, which is kind of a misnomer of the television shows. They're really not stuck anywhere. So, you know, they will come to places that they enjoyed, that they loved, that they, you know, want to hang out with, or they want to see do well. So much of the time they actually want to see people do well in their home. They want to see them thrive. They want to see them, you know, build a relationship with the new people that have moved in and things like that. So I think, you know, ultimately when we see aggression in hauntings towards things like new homeowners and stuff like that, we're usually not dealing with something that there were people's spirits. It's literally just, you know, negative entities, and that can be cured with whatever that person's got going on. Clean it up. You're not going to be in range of that anymore. Don't worry about it. But ultimately, the whole, you know, people are going to, you know, spirits that used to occupy the home are going to hate your guts. It just doesn't seem to happen. It's not research based. It's very television based. So, which brings us into Dan's question, which came in a few days ago, and so I'm still getting to everybody's questions because they're all in my inbox right now. I thought this was really good. Dan was asking, why do folks insist on the scary stories of the paranormal? I understand there's a push in the entertainment industry, but I really don't have any. So yeah, so here's the thing. When it comes to fear, is that sometimes source is very hard to recognize in a storm. So this is a part of it as well. So people feel that sense of aloneness. They feel that sense of momentary fear. And of course, with ghost stories, it can be a safe way to experience that fear, right? It can be a really safe way to do that, because ultimately, you know, you're experiencing a story from afar, right? We still get that adrenaline rush, which is something where, you know, people dig the adrenaline rush. That's what adrenaline junkies are. That's why people go on roller coasters. And we really dig into it. I've never been one to be frightened of the paranormal either. It's never been a thing for me. But also there's a lot of people that are very frightened of heights too. And I'm very frightened of heights. Other people can walk on a you know, iron girder 32 stories up off the ground and they don't care. So it really, I think, depends on what our tapes are about what that is. So we have to remember, people become afraid of the situation, or it can be as afraid of the situation as they are of the solution also. So I think this winds into a part of why it is that people hang on to fear, because sometimes ultimately that's what they're doing. And right now we have sort of an epidemic going on with the media and things like that, where fear has become a real hardcore driving force in how they're getting ratings. There's a lot of clickbait that's out there. You guys have probably seen it. It's a lot of fear mongering that's going on in the West here, and probably in other parts of the world as well, where, you know, facts and statistics and things like that just completely go out the wayside, and it's a complete fear-driven dialogue that is, or monologue, I should say, that's going on. It's not even a dialogue anymore. So ultimately, when people become afraid of the situation and they are afraid of the solution at the same time, then people will freeze and do nothing, because they get into a comfort zone of feeling like that doing nothing is actually working for them. They think it's working because they're not stressed about one or the other. So when they're presented with the two fears, sitting in the middle is oftentimes where they will be, and getting them out of that middle is really, really hard. They don't realize it'll steal your life away, but it feels good in the moment. It's like being on a boat, and as you rock in that boat of mediocrity, you don't take the opportunities, right, that are given. So fear is really interesting. And when it comes to the paranormal, it gets bled out by the scary ghost stories and the TV shows and things like that. Because ultimately, if you have a solution to the problem, then either the solution is something that you don't want, or it's something that is frightening to you, like cleaning up your emotional stuff. That's very scary for a lot of people. There's a very select, I think, intelligent and enlightened group of people, that's you guys, that are willing to sit and begin to clean up their stuff in order to get over that hump and get to the better feeling places. So this becomes a really big problem. And as I say, when we rock on the boat of mediocrity, we don't do that. We end up in this lull that's very safe. And the entertainment industry can be like this too. So when I was doing, this was years ago now, I designed a number of pitches for TV shows. And, the idea was to demonstrate how cleaning up your stuff, healing from past wounds, all of that kind of thing will change the activity in your experience. And it was going to be really great. And as many times as I pitched the idea of teaching the living, every single producer got hung up on, but where's the fear though? Where's the fear? What are we going to do without the fear? How do we function around this without the fear? And I said, well, there's plenty of shows out there that aren't, fear driven, that do extremely well. But the idea of separating the paranormal from fear did not go over well. They did not like that thought at all. It was like, well, yeah, but we've got this hook. We've got people wedged into this mindset of driving, just driving, sitting in the fear, experiencing these fearful things. If they're not experiencing these fearful things, well, then what? And they were extremely afraid of the solution to that. They didn't want anything to do with it. It was very interesting. So we have to be prepared for the new thing, ultimately, when we get into something like this, which again is very scary, but it's not the type of fear that people really want. And it's the great thing about spirits, the great thing about these, whether it be shadow people or whatever you're seeing, is that spirits call us to opportunity. Every time they call us to opportunity, they're always looking to see us called to opportunity. Even negative entities, it's like, they are an opportunity to start to change where we're vibrating at, so that we can move to the next level in our state of being, to clean up what we need to clean up, all of that. We have to get that the universe really does want and has more for us than what we experience. But the problem is that we have to say goodbye to the old narrative. And when we say goodbye to the old narrative, which in the case of the paranormal is, this has to be the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to you. It's a fear-driven thing. It's meant to stay in this dark, gloomy, murky shadow space. Then that's a really hard thing for people to let go of if they can't quite see what's on the other side of it clearly. And the damn thing is when we look at other situations, like we look at say for example, a natural disaster happens, say there's a minor earthquake or something like that, say a building falls in, we want to see the success of that building rebuilt and the business thriving, right? We want to see that. But when we introduce certain concepts with the paranormal, we have to understand that it's not nature caused. And when it's not nature caused and it's an attitude that is beginning to cause it, it's a way of being that's beginning to cause it, that taking a look at ourselves and not being able to force the occurrences onto other things becomes something that is very fearful for people to hang on to, or to deal with, that have not done the work or have not been able to move themselves into the right headspace, or maybe haven't even had the help to do it themselves. So we cling to scary things. We cling to scary things because we sit in that boat of mediocrity often. And as I say, sometimes scary can be fun. Like I love a good, scary story. It's awesome. Like it's great. It's what we live for. And that's the shadow we have to embrace. We have to be able to love that, and then be able to get ourselves and know that we can get ourselves to a better feeling place. That's part of the reason scary stories are fun to begin with, is because we know that once the scare is over, we can get ourselves to that next better feeling spot. But sometimes people don't want to move from that. So it becomes a very great ratings grab. Really great ratings grab. Fear, straight up, and here's the other part of it. Fear prevents empowerment. Prevents empowerment every single time. If people are not fearful, then the next step for them is empowerment. And we see this in the press, we see this in the news all the time, that, as soon as they are done with one fearful headline, they come up with another fearful headline. Very rarely do you see super good positive stuff that are making headlines. And teaching spiritual empowerment ultimately, people are afraid that if there's empowerment in different areas, that people will stop watching. And that's just simply not true. It's simply not true. People are, you know, as much as we can get hung up in fear, we can get hung up in strength as well. So it's very true. So I found a fantastic passage about this in Ask and It Is Given. So I thought I would read this to you guys because it's super cool. It's really good. Check this out. When you think a thought that rings true with who you really are, you feel harmony coursing through your physical body. Joy, love, and a sense of freedom are examples of that alignment. And when you think thoughts that do not ring true with who you really are, you feel the disharmony in your physical body. Depression, fear, feelings of bondage are examples of that misalignment. In the same way that sculptors mold clay into the creation that pleases them, you create by molding the energy. You mold it through your power of focus, by thinking about things, remembering things, and imagining things. You focus the energy when you speak, when you write, when you listen, when you are silent, when you remember, and when you imagine. You focus it through the projection of thought. Like the sculptors who, with time and practice, learn to mold the clay into the precise desired creation, you can learn to mold the energy that creates worlds through the focus of your own mind. And like the sculptors who, with their hands, feel their way as they recreate their vision, you will use your emotions to feel your way into well-being. And truly, without shadow, without contrast, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it, because when you don't know what you do, when you don't know what you want, then you don't know what you don't want. And when you don't know what you do want, you know, vice versa. It is so important that we understand the grace in the concept of shadow, because ultimately, if we are not in that headspace, if we don't understand the benefits of it, then we fail to look in the new direction. So when we start to see that contrast as, hey, wait a minute, I don't want this, and we start to train our brains into understanding, well, what is it then that we do want? We get at that point to turn our attention to what it is we want. Without that shadow, we wouldn't know which direction to go. And it's the same thing with negative entities. If they don't show up, we don't know we're off kilter. They've got to be there. They have to be there. It's fascinating. So you can actually begin to say thank you a little bit, just a little bit. Sometimes they're just too horrible, but but a little bit. You know, they are our indicators. So fear presents empowerment. Oh, thank you, Tim. He says I should put that on merchandise. Yeah, thank you for suggesting that. Yeah, but it's true. Fear is the ultimate. It's the ultimate cork stopper. You know, and when we get stuck in that, and we get stuck in the fear of what the solution might be, we've got a major problem. It's not good. So yeah. So anyway, that is my message for you guys this week. You know, we get to move into, no matter what side of the election that you fell on this past week, we get to choose how we move into this next year, this next day, this next week, this next month. We get to choose. How do we want to do that? How do you want to do that? So don't worry about what everybody else is doing. It's none of your business is to worry about what everybody else is doing. With your business is to worry about what do you want and focus on that. Because let me tell you, the universe has a plethora of possibilities, plethora that you can't even see. But if you're hung up on the contrast, hung up what you don't want, then you can't see the new opportunity. It will block it out. And the weird thing is, here's something that I've noticed too, is that when you're sitting in that headspace, if you're sitting in that fear-driven headspace, the opportunities, because you're out of range of them, opportunities are just like spirits, guys. They're just like spirits. So if you guys are down in negativity and worry and fear and all that kind of thing, the opportunities that you want, they're on a frequency too. So going back up to that other end of the frequency, getting yourself up to how that opportunity would feel if you had it now, is key, and then they start to show up. But it's no different. Everything is on a frequency. Everything, let me tell you, everything. And if you're hanging around in a negative frequency, let me tell you, those opportunities, they don't even hit your radar. Won't happen. So anyway, guys, thank you for another awesome spiritual healthcare morning. And we have some peace affirmations to do because we have to go into the rest of our week properly. Okay, everybody, take a breath. Here we go. I am a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself for who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I'm able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and certainty. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I'm able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. Thank all of you. Thank all of you. Nigel says it was great to tune back in today. I'm glad that you were here. I'm glad you all came. It's so wonderful. It is just so good to be doing this every week, and we will keep it up next week, day 128. We will just keep it going. We keep it going and keep inviting people in, guys. Keep inviting people in. People are joining us on YouTube and of course, Facebook, and watching the classes afterwards. And it's just crazy. People are watching it like mad on YouTube and all that stuff. So please share them, spread the word, bring people in, and because this is always so much fun every week. I just love it. And you guys are what keep it going. You guys keep it going. It's amazing. So I will see you guys next week. Have a good one, everybody. And remember, it is Remembrance Day in Canada. And I think it is Veterans Day in the US. And so if you see these people, gratitude, appreciation, thank you, and not from a place of pity, from a place of joy. Thank you. Say thank you. Bye, everyone.